Hello everyone and welcome to Clarity 16.2.2 Feature Supportability Training. I am Vib Mehrotra, and as part of this section we will be talking about the REST API enhancements. Starting 16.2.2, the following REST API enhancements are available to the end users. First, ability to get additional metadata for user or resource object-based lookups. Ability to update sub-object data without passing the parent context, ability to update Clarity impersonating as another user, and ability to change the user password in an SSO environment only. The reason this is important is because customers that are integrating with third-party application want the capability to make REST API calls using a service account to update Clarity, but using the actual user itself. So for example, if a user is making a change in a third-party application and a REST API call is made into Clarity, today the integration will use a service account such as an administrator, and the changes that in Clarity get reflected as administrator. The request from customers is that when they make that call, they want to be able to make the change not as the service account or administrator, but as the actual user itself without using that user's credentials. The customers with specific security requirement also wanted the ability to change the service account passwords in an SSO environment. This way, the administrator accounts that are defined in Clarity can be managed by a central password management system. When integrating with a third-party application, it is not easy to map the Clarity user's internal ID with another application's unique user. By allowing the ability to expand a user-based or a resource-based lookup information, the integration can now pull the user or resource-specific information such as their email address or username that will allow the integration with the third-party application much easier. And then finally, when updating Clarity metadata, it is not easy to always pass the parent context. So when integrating, having the ability to just pass the objects or the sub-objects internal ID to make an update to it was the request from the customers. With that, let's see the product in action. So because this is REST API integration, I'm going to be showing majority of it using an API client that I am using. However, the users can replicate the same by using any other REST API clients. So to begin with, I am going to go in and show you a specific project right here in Clarity. It's the Able Payments Module project, and I have the manager Dana Lewis and the sponsor as Beth Roberts. If I am integrating with another application and I wanted to get more information about Dana Lewis using an API such as the username and so on, now I can do that by essentially making that call. So for that, I'm going to go into my REST API client, and I can make a call basically saying within my Clarity for this specific project, I want to get the manager field, and for that manager I want to expand the username itself. Right? So if I make that call, I can now get the return back that for Dana Lewis, the internal ID is right here and the username is just Dana. So that allows me to now get that specific value for the username. Next, if I wanted to get additional information for Dana, such as her email address, I can do so by saying expand the manager field, and specifically when expanding, I want to get the username, email, and resource ID. When I make that call, it now gives me that information, the resource ID, the Dana Lewis username, and her email address. To understand a little bit more about the lookup itself, let's also go into the administration of Clarity. And right here I can see that in my project object, the lookup that is associated to it is the browse resource lookup. This is an out-of-the-box configuration. If I open this, I can see that this specific lookup is tied to the object user. That is what is allowing me to pull in the specific information or expanding that information for that lookup itself. To see that a little bit more, what we've also done is that if you were to do a describe or a get on the user object itself, so right here I'm doing a get and doing a describe on the user object. When I do that, it will come back and it'll tell me all the details about that specific object, but specifically what I'm looking at is the is expandable true. This allows me to know that this specific object, if there is a lookup against it, then I can use the is expandable and I can specifically find the information or the attributes that also have this is expand attribute enabled. So let's find that for this one. So right here when I'm doing a search, I can see the resource underscore ID, or the specific name is resource ID, that is also expandable. I can see the email address is expandable and the username is expandable. So those are the three attributes that I can do an expand on, and that's how I can find out that using this describe. The other one, I can also do the same for the resource lookup. So stakeholder I have that is assigned to my project. I can say for the business owner, give me the user ID, the email address, and the unique name for that specific one. So Beth Roberts was the one that is assigned, and I have now, using the expand capability, I can get her unique name, the user ID, and the email address. And same thing if I go into the resource object. If I do a describe on that object, I can see that it is expandable is true, and searching on it in terms of the specific attributes, I can see the unique name is expandable, I can see email address is expandable, and I can see the user ID is expandable for the resource specific lookup. Next, I'm going to show how we can update the sub-object using just the sub-object ID. So for that, I'm going to go first look at my project, and in my project, I'm going to look at these tasks. So right here, I am in my able payments module. In here, I have quite a few tasks already created. None of the tasks have any short names populated. And specifically, the two tasks, the planning phase and the define, scope change, and control process, they're set as their work status is set as backlog. So let's make some changes to this using just the internal ID of these two tasks. All right, so I'm going to go in again to my REST API client. The first thing I'm going to do is show you that how I can create a new task within my project by only passing the parent internal ID. So right here, I'm going to do a post. I'm going to call the post against my task object. I'm passing the parent ID, which is the internal ID of that able payment module. And I want to create a new task called project kickoff meeting with start date of Jan 22nd. So when I do that, it gets created. Let's go back into Clarity. Let's do a navigational refresh. And now I can see that project kickoff meeting for Jan 22nd just got created. So I only passed the internal 5 million number of it, and it created that. Next, let's do the same by creating multiple of these, and I'm going to create it the project charter development and design review. Same thing, but it's a simple. I can create multiple of that. Let's do a navigational refresh, and I should be able to see those tasks created, charter development and the other one. All right. Next, let's update some of the existing tasks by only using its internal ID. So in this case, I'm going to update the work status of two of those tasks that I was talking about, and I'll change from backlog to another status. Again, all I'm going to do is make a patch call to tasks. I'm passing just the internal ID of my two tasks, and I'm then passing the value I want to change. So let's do that. Let's go back into Clarity. So these were the two that right now are in backlog status. If I do a navigational refresh, it'll show me the updated values for those two. Here it's got changed to working and sign off. So both of those got changed. Let's do one more, which is update to task by passing just its internal ID, and let's add some short names to them. Again, all I'm doing is I'm passing the project, it's a 5 million number, and then I'm passing within the tasks. When I make that call, I go right in here, do a navigational refresh, and there that one got updated. All right. Next, let's look at the ability to change the password of a user. So in this case, I am right here. I am basically going to be able to make a call. And again, the way the password reset works is you can make the call using the post to the auth user credentials, provided the appropriate access rights have been assigned to the administrator as well as to the end user. So let's look at that before we make the call. So I am going to go into my Clarity Studio, and in here these are the two access rights that are now introduced in Clarity 16.2.2. The way these two access rights work and that are required in order for the password change functionality to work, that is after the functionality is enabled in the environment, these two access rights would need to be assigned appropriately. The first is the Administration Service Account Manager. This is the access right that needs to be assigned to the user or administrator that can change other users' password. So this is the administrator access right that you need to assign to the admin so that they can change another user's password. And the second is the administration service account. This is the access right that needs to be assigned to the user whose password can be changed by the administrator. So in my example, I'm going to invoke the call as admin, and I've granted admin the administration service account manager access right. And I'm going to change the password for the user called Cheryl Amos, and Cheryl Amos has the access right of administration service account, which then allows her password to be reset by admin. If you try to change a password for a user that does not have this access right, then the API call will fail. All right, so let's go just look at how that call would be made. So I would make the call, a post REST API call to auth user credentials. I will have to pass the internal ID of the user whose password I want to change. In this case, it'll be Cheryl Amos internal ID. And I will pass the credentials, which is the password, either in base 64 or using the certificate key. So if I am using the certificate key, the details of that is in the training presentation, where the certificate key will have to be populated in Clarity, and when making the call you have to pass that certificate. If the certificate is populated or configured in Clarity, then we will expect the certificate to be passed. All right, so now that we have this, I can make the call, and essentially it'll only come back and tell me that the call was successful. We will not give you the user's password. We will not give any information. If the call failed, you will get the actual error message back indicating why it failed, such as the password was not correct or the user does not have the appropriate access right. All right. And then the last API call I want to show is how you can make a change impersonating as another user. Again, in this case, there is a new access right that is passed or defined in Clarity 16.2.2. That access right has to be assigned to the administrator that can impersonate as somebody else. So let's look at that access right. So if I go back in here, if I search the access right that is impersonate a user. This is the access right that'll need to be assigned to the admin that can impersonate as somebody else. When you are impersonating as somebody else, that other user that you're impersonating as should have the appropriate right to make the necessary changes, including the API access right. Otherwise, the call will not work. So that is very important. Again, the details of this is going to be in our documentation as well as it is in our training, that the appropriate access right has to be granted to the admin and to the user that you're impersonating as. All right, next, let's see that in order to impersonate as somebody else, some of the things that is needed is after the access right, and also the functionality has to be enabled in that environment. Access right has to be granted, and once that is done, the way the call would be made is you would run the call as admin, and in the header, you're going to pass this new header called X API impersonate user, and in there you will pass the username of the user that you want to impersonate as. Right, so this would be the header that needs to be passed. If you're making any change in the JSON, so what specifically needs to be modified. So in this case, I am going to make the call as admin, and I want to change the short name of my tasks to these two values using Cheryl Amos. So let's go ahead and make that call. Once the call is done, I'll get the message back that the change is done, and I can go into Clarity and I can see that let's go ahead and do a navigational refresh, and I can probably see that the short name would have been updated right here for these two that I just modified. So I passed in the internal ID for those, and I modified and I added the short names for these two tasks. Let's look at one more call change, and then so here I'm going to go and do the same, but I'm going to make the call and I'm going to modify again right here. I'm going to make a change to the same project. I'm going to impersonate as Cheryl Amos, and I'm going to change the objective to the specific value. Let's just call it, I'm going to add demo value at the end of it. All right, so let's go ahead and make that call. Once that update is done, I can go back into Clarity, the same project. If I go into the properties, I can see that the objective got updated and now it has the demo value. Now, because the API was run under admin and admin made the change using the user Cheryl Amos, we've enhanced our audit capability to track that specific information. So for that, let's go into the modern UX, and within the modern UX, I'm going to navigate to the administration, and within administration, I'm going to go to audit. So right here under audit, what I'm looking at is the information that all the changes that have been tracked, and there is a new column called impersonated by. This is a new column that is being added to the audit modules, and in here, if a change is made by a user impersonating as somebody else, then that user that impersonated as somebody else, their information will be populated. So let's filter it down, saying show me the one that is not empty. And I'm looking at the data for today. So just now the changes I made, and I can see right here that for the Able project, the these two tasks, I updated the short name. The change was made as Cheryl Amos, but the impersonated by value is populated. So Ian Erpel, the admin, made a change as Cheryl Amos and modified the short name for these two. Similarly, admin made a change as Cheryl Amos and updated the objective value for Able payment module. So I can now easily see if somebody is making a change as another user. And this concludes our REST API enhancement section. Thank you.